What if I told you that most people study completely wrong? What if the reason you forget everything you learn has nothing to do with your memory or intelligence? After analyzing the study methods of top performers across different fields, from medical students to language learners to professional exam takers, I discovered something shocking. The people who learn fastest and remember longest all use 15 specific study habits that most people have never heard of. Here's the brutal truth. You've been taught to study in ways that feel productive, but are scientifically proven to be ineffective. Highlighting text, rereading notes, and cramming before exams create the illusion of learning while producing minimal long-term retention. You feel like you're working hard, but your brain isn't actually encoding information in a way that lasts. The gap between average learners and exceptional learners isn't natural ability, it's study methodology. When you understand how your brain actually learns and remembers information, you can master any subject faster than you ever thought possible. These 15 habits are the exact techniques used by people who seem to have photographic memories or learn new skills effortlessly. I used to spend hours studying and forget everything within days. I'd read the same material repeatedly, make beautiful notes, and still blank during tests. I thought I just wasn't smart enough or didn't have a good memory. Then I discovered these evidence-based study habits used by the top 1% of learners, and everything changed. Within weeks of implementing these techniques, I was learning faster, retaining more, and actually enjoying the process. Material that used to take me weeks to master, I could now learn in days. Complex concepts that seemed impossible to understand suddenly made perfect sense. The difference wasn't that my brain changed. The difference was that I finally learned how to use it properly. The beautiful thing about these study habits is they work for any subject. Languages, technical skills, academic subjects, professional certifications, anything. They're based on decades of cognitive science research about how memory formation works, how attention functions, and how the brain consolidates learning during sleep. But here's what most people get wrong about effective studying. They think it's about studying more or studying harder. It's not. It's about studying smarter using techniques that align with how your brain naturally processes and stores information. You can actually study less and learn more when you use the right methods. Some of these habits will feel counterintuitive. They go against everything you've been taught in school, but they're backed by neuroscience and proven by thousands of learners who've transformed their ability to acquire and retain knowledge. The best part? They're not complicated or time-consuming. They're simple shifts in how you approach learning that create dramatic improvements in results. Whether you're a student preparing for exams, a professional learning new skills, or someone who just wants to learn faster and remember longer, these 15 habits will revolutionize your ability to master any subject. If you're ready to unlock your brain's full learning potential and never forget important information again, subscribe right now because what I'm about to share will transform how you learn forever. Habit 1. Active recall testing. The first and most powerful study habit is active recall testing. Instead of passively rereading material, you force your brain to retrieve information from memory without looking at your notes. This is the single most effective learning technique according to cognitive science research. Close your book and try to write down everything you remember about what you just studied. Quiz yourself constantly. Use flashcards not just to memorize, but to practice retrieving information. The struggle to remember is what creates strong memory traces in your brain. Here's why this works. Retrieval is a more powerful learning event than encoding. Every time you successfully pull information from memory, you strengthen that neural pathway exponentially. Passive reviewing might make you familiar with information, but active recall makes you own it permanently. Emily, a medical student struggling to remember thousands of facts, switched from rereading to active recall. She'd study a topic, then close her book and write everything she could remember. Her retention improved so dramatically that she went from average grades to top of her class in one semester. Habit 2. Spaced repetition system. The second habit is implementing a spaced repetition system. Instead of cramming all your studying into one session, you review material at increasing intervals. 1 day later, 3 days later, 1 week later, 2 weeks later, 1 month later. This spacing effect is one of the most robust findings in memory research. Your brain consolidates information more effectively when reviews are spaced over time rather than massed together. Each spaced review reactivates the memory and strengthens it further. Use apps like Anki or create a simple calendar system where you schedule reviews at optimal intervals. The key is reviewing just before you're about to forget, which forces your brain to work harder to retrieve the information and thereby strengthens the memory. Habit 3. The Feynman Technique. The third habit is using the Feynman Technique, named after the Nobel Prize-winning physicist. After learning something, explain it in simple language as if teaching a child. If you struggle to explain it simply, you don't truly understand it yet. This technique exposes gaps in your understanding immediately. When you try to explain something and get stuck, you've identified exactly what you need to study more. Return to that specific gap, learn it properly, then try explaining again until you can do it clearly and simply. The act of translating complex information into simple language forces deep processing that creates lasting understanding. You're not just memorizing words, you're building genuine comprehension that transfers to new situations. Habit 4. Interleaved practice. The fourth habit is interleaved practice. Instead of studying one topic until you master it, then moving to the next, you mix different topics or types of problems in the same study session. This feels less efficient because you're not achieving the same level of immediate performance, but research proves it creates better long-term retention and transfer of knowledge. Your brain learns to discriminate between different concepts and recognize when to apply which knowledge. Study math problems of different types in random order. Mix vocabulary from different categories. Alternate between related topics. The variation forces your brain to actively determine which approach to use, creating stronger and more flexible learning. Habit 5. The pre-study prime. The fifth habit is the pre-study prime. Before diving into new material, spend 5 minutes reviewing what you already know about the topic and asking questions about what you're about to learn. This activates relevant prior knowledge and creates mental hooks for new information. Your brain learns by connecting new information to existing knowledge. When you prime your brain with context before studying, you create a framework that makes new information much easier to absorb and remember. You're essentially preparing the soil before planting seeds. Write down 3 things you already know about the topic and 3 questions you want answered. This simple 5-minute practice can double your learning efficiency because your brain knows what to look for and where to file new information. Habit 6. Multisensory encoding. The sixth habit is multisensory encoding. Engage as many senses as possible while learning. Don't just read, say it out loud, write it by hand, create visual diagrams, or even walk while reviewing. Each sensory channel creates additional memory traces. When you read silently, you create one type of memory. When you also speak it, you add auditory encoding. When you write it, you add motor memory. When you visualize it, you add spatial memory. Multiple encodings mean multiple retrieval paths, making information much harder to forget. Research shows that handwriting notes creates better retention than typing because the motor movements create additional memory encoding. Drawing concept maps engages visual spatial processing that enhances understanding. Movement while learning creates contextual memory cues. Habit 7. The elaboration method. The seventh habit is using the elaboration method. Instead of just learning facts, you elaborate on them by connecting them to what you already know, creating analogies, and asking why they're true or how they work. When you learn that mitochondria produce energy, don't just memorize that fact. Elaborate. Why do cells need energy? How is this similar to a power plant? What would happen if mitochondria stopped working? These elaborations create a rich network of associations that make the information unforgettable. The more you elaborate, the more retrieval paths you create. Instead of one weak connection, you have dozens of strong connections to the same information. This is why understanding through elaboration beats rote memorization every single time. Habit 8. Strategic breaks and diffuse mode. The eighth habit is understanding and using strategic breaks. Your brain has 2 modes, focused mode when actively studying and diffuse mode during rest. Both are essential for learning. Breakthrough insights often come during breaks, not during intense focus. Study intensely for 25-50 minutes, then take a 5-10 minute break where you completely disengage. Walk, stretch, or do something mindless. During these breaks, your diffuse mode processes and consolidates what you learned. This isn't wasting time, it's essential for learning. The Pomodoro technique works so well because it respects this natural rhythm. You focus intensely, then rest, allowing your brain to consolidate before the next session. People who power through without breaks actually learn less because they never give their brain time to process. Habit 9. Sleep-based consolidation. The 9th habit is prioritizing sleep-based consolidation. Your brain consolidates memories during sleep, particularly deep sleep and REM sleep. Studying late at night and sacrificing sleep is one of the worst learning strategies possible. Instead, study in the evening, then sleep. Your brain will process and strengthen those memories overnight. Students who sleep after studying remember significantly more than those who stay awake, even when total time awake is the same. Sleep isn't downtime. It's when learning becomes permanent. Review key information right before sleep. Your brain will prioritize consolidating whatever was active in your mind before sleeping. This is why falling asleep thinking about what you learned is more effective than cramming until you collapse from exhaustion. Habit 10. The generation effect. The 10th habit is leveraging the generation effect. Instead of receiving information passively, actively generate answers, summaries, or solutions before being given them. The effort to generate information creates much stronger memories than passive reception. Before reading a chapter, try to predict what it will cover. Before looking at the answer, attempt to solve the problem. Before reading the definition, try to define the term yourself. Even if you're wrong, the generation attempt primes your brain to encode the correct information more effectively. Habit 11. Context variation. The 11th habit is studying with context variation. Change your study location, time of day, and even background conditions. This makes your knowledge less dependent on specific environmental cues and more robust across situations. If you always study in the same quiet room, you might struggle to recall information in different environments like a noisy exam hall. When you vary contexts during learning, your knowledge becomes more flexible and accessible regardless of where you need it. Habit 12. Teaching and explaining. The 12th habit is teaching and explaining to others. When you teach material, you process it at a deeper level than when studying for yourself. You anticipate questions, clarify confusing points, and organize information logically. Find a study partner and take turns teaching each other. Explain concepts to friends or family. Create tutorial videos or write explanations. The act of teaching forces you to truly understand rather than just recognize information. Habit 13. Metacognitive monitoring. The 13th habit is metacognitive monitoring, which means regularly assessing whether you actually understand or just think you understand. Most people overestimate their learning because recognition feels like knowledge. After studying, test yourself without any cues. If you can't reproduce the information from memory, you haven't learned it yet, regardless of how familiar it feels. Use this honest assessment to direct your study efforts toward what you truly don't know. Habit 14. Mistake analysis protocol. The 14th habit is implementing a mistake analysis protocol. Every time you get something wrong, don't just note the correct answer. Analyze why you got it wrong, what misconception led you there, and what you need to remember to prevent that mistake. Create a mistake log where you document errors and the lessons learned. This transforms mistakes from failures into powerful learning opportunities that accelerate your progress. Habit 15. The integration review. 15th habit is regular integration reviews where you connect everything you've learned into a coherent whole. Create mind maps showing relationships between topics. Write summaries that integrate multiple concepts. This big picture understanding ensures knowledge is organized and accessible. The transformation these 15 habits create is extraordinary. Before using them, most people study inefficiently, forget quickly, and struggle with complex material. After mastering these habits, you learn anything faster than you thought possible and remember it permanently. Start with active recall and spaced repetition. These two alone will transform your learning. Master them, then add others. Write in the comments which subject you're going to learn using these habits. If this revealed how to study effectively, subscribe and share it. Remember, learning isn't about time invested. It's about methods used.